welcome. I'm Carrie. I'm a registered nurse and lactation consultant, like Linda said, and I own a company called the Mama Coach, and we're coast to coast, and we are committed to helping families make this parent gig easier. So I'm really appreciative that you are spending an hour with us today, or however long it takes. And I'm speaking of a topic that's really dear to my heart because as a new mom, it caused me a lot of anxiety. And to be honest, it still does. My children are 11 and 7, and my oldest son, um, he was a very, very fussy baby. We really, really struggled with him, and then found out he was allergic to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, milk, and peaches. So I am a nurse, and I was going back to work at the time and just felt extreme overwhelm and anxiety about how I was going to keep him safe when he wasn't with me, right? Which is a total normal feeling as a new mom, and you're anyway, never mind food allergies. And so I'm so thrilled to have partnered with Kids & Co. because I really believe in the care and concern they take in each child's needs when it comes to food and food allergies. So welcome, and we'll get started. And if you have questions, please, there's a chat box. You can throw it there, and I'm happy to answer them. And if you have more questions, you can always reach out to me or anyone on our team, and we're happy to help. So let's get started here. So first off, what are allergies? And basically it's when our immune system overreacts. It's a normal food protein, insect sting, environmental stuff that's in our world that to the average immune system, we don't react. But if your child has a food allergy, essentially their immune system is just hyperactive, and it sees this normal protein as a foreign body, and it overreacts, and the entire body sometimes, all the different systems basically attack, and it creates that allergic reaction. So what are the top allergies? I've listed them here. Gluten, eggs, milk, mustard, peanuts, shellfish, fish, sesame seeds, soy can be a big one. Sulfites, which are in preservative, it's the preservatives in food often, and meat. So symptoms, and you know what, this looks different. It can look different from the first time your child's been exposed to maybe the second, third, fourth. Sometimes it gets worse. Often it does, the more they're exposed. And sometimes it includes one body system, and sometimes it's the entire body. And so what can it look like? It can affect the skin with like hives, swelling, and itching. Sometimes they just get really, really red in the face. A stomach ache. Sometimes they'll just complain that their stomach hurts. And sometimes it's like an angry vomit or diarrhea. It can happen instantly, or it can even happen an hour or two later. And that's the confusing, overwhelming piece of allergies, right? Swelling is another one. Their lips can swell, their tongue can swell. And then the respiratory system, right? So maybe they eat something and it's just sneeze, 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 and wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath. But then it can also affect symptoms that maybe aren't quite so obvious, like irritability. All of a sudden, they're just, something's not right. And maybe they're a toddler and they can't tell you exactly what it is. Confused, they're diaphoretic, which is sweating. They feel dizzy, they may faint, and heaven forbid, sometimes they can lose consciousness. Often this happens very quickly, but sometimes it can take hours. And sometimes it can happen, you treat it, and then it can happen. So that sounds overwhelming. This is just breaking it down symptoms by symptoms. But what is anaphylaxis? Because not every food allergy, I'm sorry, when I speak today, I'm speaking about food allergies. There are, insect stings, environmental stuff, but today we're talking about food allergies. So what is anaphylaxis, right? So that is when it is severe and life-threatening. And so these are symptoms that are common in anaphylaxis. So the mouth, starting at the top, the itching, swelling of lips and tongue, and it usually happens very quickly. Their throat, they're going to complain they're itchy, it's tight, it feels like it's closing, like they're wheezing, or they're very hoarse. And then the respiratory system, they're short of breath, they're coughing and they're wheezing, and their tummies, right? They're swelling. Oops, I just noticed I wrote itching, but that's not the gut. It's vomiting, right? They're vomiting or diarrhea, and it can happen right away. And the skin is hives and swelling and itching. Do they have to have more than one symptom for it to be anaphylaxis? No. Just one of these is enough for it to be anaphylaxis, because these are serious, right? So one or many can be anaphylaxis. And so if you think your child is having anaphylaxis, and maybe it's the first time, and if that's the case, and it's the first, usually, and I say usually, but usually the first time, like say you introduce your child to peanut butter and they've never had it before, and you notice, they're getting hives around their face, they're getting red, they're getting angry. Usually it's not anaphylaxis that very first time, okay? The reaction is usually less because it's the first time their body's been exposed. But like I said, that overreactive immune system, the second time that they're exposed, usually the worse it is. So if it's the first time your child's had this food and you're like, something is not right, obviously take the food away. I would give them an antihistamine if you have something at home, like Benadryl or Arius, whatever it is for children. And I would, if it's serious and it's affecting their throat, or you're worried, you should call 911, right, if you're home. Or if you're just concerned but they seem okay, I would still take them into emergency right away and get them treated. And second of all, you need to have a plan for if that happens again. And honestly, that's where the anxiety comes in as a parent, because what you need is a plan and an EpiPen, right? And this is the picture. So that there's EpiPens juniors, and I believe they are up to 50 pounds, okay? And then they move to the adult EpiPens. So what an EpiPen is epinephrine, because when somebody is having anaphylaxis, the blood vessels dilate, the blood pressure drops, and that's what the emergency is, right? So giving a dose of epinephrine, it works very fast, and it helps those blood vessels constrict, which boosts the blood pressure and is life-saving, right? EpiPens, they're auto-injectable, so you're not drawing anything up. It's a pen. It comes in a case, and you take the blue lid off at the top. I'll show you, click back. That blue lid at the very top comes off, and then that orange piece at the bottom, even if it's through your child's pants, it can be, you just push the orange piece into their leg, a big muscle. So their leg, their thigh, the top of their thigh is usually the best place, and you hold it for 10 seconds. And it's scary, but it will save their life. And then you call 911. The biggest thing is, if you're wondering if this is anaphylaxis and you're on the fence, it is always, always, always better to give the EpiPen than to wait, because the quicker you give it, the better the response. And it is not going to hurt your child to not give the or give the EpiPen when they maybe didn't need it. It will give them a dose of adrenaline, essentially, but it will not have lifelong implications, versus not giving the EpiPen can be it can be a big problem. If it's anaphylaxis, we need to be giving the EpiPen. And I always suggest that you carry more than one, because there's a small chance that you may need a second dose. And how you would know if you needed to give this is if the symptoms weren't resolving. You give it and 5 minutes later they're still wheezing, they're still swollen, the symptoms haven't subsided, because it should subside fairly quickly. I would give that second dose while you're waiting for help to arrive. And quite often, and I'm speaking from personal experience, when my son was 5 years old, we had been dealing with his allergies for 4 years at the time, and he accidentally consumed something that had peanuts, and he's allergic to peanuts. And it was scary because he instantly was vomiting and wheezing, and I gave the EpiPen in his leg, through his pants, and called 911. But by the time 911 got there, it's like nothing had happened. That is how quick EpiPens work, right? I gave it to him probably within, I don't know, a minute of him consuming it. And, by the time he got there, he was, hyper and full of adrenaline, literally. But okay, he only needed that one dose. But it just goes to show how important it is to have it on hand. So this is the number one way to never ever be in this place of stress, of having the allergic reaction, because it's scary. So, and Kids and Co does this, they're so good, is avoiding food allergens. We need to avoid them first. So how do we do that without, it's consuming is what it is as a parent. And so this is an important piece, because I remember being in the allergist office, and I was crying. I was so upset that my little baby guy had all of these food allergies, and how was I going to keep him safe? And he reminded me that you need to remember that these food allergens, it's the proteins in food, right? It's something that they're consuming. In order to have an allergic reaction, they need to either eat it, touch it, or contact with the nose and the eyes. But the smell of peanut butter does not cause an allergic reaction. In that case, sitting in his office, I'll never forget it. He said, "Carrie, it isn't Ebola." Okay. But it is not, and it was just such a lesson, because to give you an example, I helped a mom a couple months ago, and her son has anaphylaxis to dairy, and she, the weekend before, her son wasn't even eating the burgers, had no plan to, but they put cheese on the burgers, and only the adults were eating it. And she went home scared, right? Because there was just so much anxiety about, what if, he was sitting next to somebody eating a cheeseburger and he took a breath? Could that have impacted him? And the answer is no, right? It's touching, tasting, or usually on their fingers, and then they touch it to their nose or their mouth. So how do we avoid it? And honestly, it's really about reading the labels. If this food may contain, then they shouldn't have it. And it's a challenge, because the food industry often, there's to avoid legalities. You'll see a few slides back, I showed you kind of the top 10 allergens in Canada. You'll see that on a lot of foods, right? And so I always suggest, when you're shopping for your babe with allergies, stick to the very outside perimeters of the grocery store, because it's those middle aisles that are honestly full of allergens, because that's where our processed foods are, and that's usually where the highest risk foods are, right? the granola bars, the cookies, etc. All of a sudden, I became a baker because I wanted to know that his food was safe, right? And I feel like there's more and more um, companies that are starting to tailor entire product lines to allergenic to kids with allergies. One example would be Enjoy Life, right? I use their chocolate chips all the time because they're top 10 allergen free. So you should have a look at that. There's lots of different brands out there, but we want to avoid them ingesting it, and then we want to avoid them touching it. And touching it is something that involves teaching to people that they're surrounded by. So if somebody is eating a peanut butter sandwich, and my boy that I speak of, he's now 11 and he eats lunch in grade 5 in a school that's not peanut free, and I know his friends take peanut butter sandwiches, and it was me doing a teaching session, which I go to the school every year and I do it, and providing wipes so that these kids are wiping their hands properly, because you don't want them touching the table after eating a sandwich, and then your son or my son with a peanut allergy touching his mouth and having anaphylaxis, right? And this is another thing Kids and Co is great at. They're first off nut free, right? But they wipe the tables and they wipe the children's hands and face after every meal. So teaching points for kids, and because we have to teach them from a really young age that they need to take ownership for themselves when it comes to food allergies. And as adults, this feels overwhelming, but as a child, usually these food allergies occur at a very young age, and they'll grow up knowing no different. And so I worked hard teaching my son that you wash your hands before you eat and you wash them after, because I don't know for sure what's on his hands. And remember, moving things from his hands to his mouth increase that risk of anaphylaxis. So step one, he just knows. And hand sanitizer doesn't kill food protein allergies, right? So that's not going to work. It needs to be soap and water. And then the next thing we teach is that you only make food you only eat food that is made for you, right? So if somebody offers to share, even if it's a parent, I teach them that they say no, right? Because we need to, not everybody has the same level of understanding as we do. Another example is a family I was working with. They worked so hard. Their son he was 4, had a peanut allergy. They had a ton of anxiety. They took him to a birthday party after a lot of talking that he ate the cake. Mom went to pick him up and he said, I loved that Dairy Queen cake, and Dairy Queen, it tastes delicious, but there's peanuts everywhere. The 4-year-old was fine, but that's where, that's the challenge, right? It's really about communication. And so teaching your child that even if somebody offers to you, no, you only eat food that your mom has said it's okay to, and that it's never safe to share food. We don't share spoons, forks, knives, cups. If somebody says it's okay, it's still not okay. And if you feel like you got something on your skin, you need to ask an adult for help. And here we go, reading labels, right? We're lucky here in Canada, all ingredients have to be on the labels. And I encourage families to read the label every time. And this is hard because, it's an extra step in an already busy day. But the challenge is sometimes companies change where they manufacture their food, so the labels can change. And so you don't want to get in the habit of making the assumption that something's safe because it could change. And if you are wondering if something's safe, I'll quite often call the 1-800 number on the back, or I'll go online. It's really about just extra due diligence. And then when it comes to the outsides of the grocery store, right, the produce, the meat, um, those are usually your safest places, fruit, vegetables. But I make sure that I soak my fruit and vegetables first, because I don't actually know if somebody was eating a Reese's peanut butter bar and then picked up the broccoli and put it back. So I'm just careful and soak everything. The other thing is sometimes it's not just food, right? Vitamins is another thing that you want to look at, and skincare products and pet food. Just 2 weeks ago, my son was at a friend's house and he wanted to feed the dog. And I said, whoa, 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 like, let's see, let's see. And quite often, um, pet food can have allergens in it, and it did. So um, take a look, right? Um, it's just, again, it's just vigilance and being very careful. So preventing cross-contamination. So this is what happens when a small amount of whatever it is that your child's allergic to gets into another food by accident. And so this happens in restaurants, right? And and just it's always by accident. And so how do we avoid it? And it happens, at friends' houses who know your kid has a peanut allergy, but you still need to. They think you're being careful, but it's about education on how to be vigilant and ensure that there's zero cross contamination. And so the biggest thing is hand washing and surface washing, and not sharing knives, right? Um, like I said, hand sanitizers aren't effective. And it's about ensuring that they're thoroughly washing all cookware, dishes, and utensils, um, and picking the allergen out of the food, like the cashews out of the salad, doesn't make it safe. Um, and any foods prepared near the allergen will put, there's just that risk for cross contamination. And to be honest, one of my best, I guess, mom hacks, even though I'm a nurse and I teach this, as a mom with allergies, of a boy with allergies, I feed him before we go anywhere. If we are going to a barbecue, I feed him before we go, because I don't know 100% what the food process is going to look like where we're going, depending where we're going. And I don't want a hungry boy. And a satisfied, full kid is less likely to want whatever it is. And I always, always bring something to contribute to the barbecue or to the potluck or wherever it is that we're going that I know he can have. And I try to make his favorites. And it's even like making 12 cupcakes and throwing them in the freezer and knowing that I have something for him. If I know he's going to a friend's birthday party, I send him something. Even if the mom says, oh, no, 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 I know it's peanut free, unless I have a close relationship with that person, and I've done teaching, I'm hesitant because I just want to know that he's safe when I'm not there. So living with a food allergy is what I just said, playdates and parties. And if you have toddlers, this is easier in the sense that usually you're doing those playdates and parties with them. And it's really about planning ahead and communication. Those are the two things. And if you know what they're going to be serving at a birthday party, it's easy to kind of even mimic what it is and bring something safe for your child depending on the allergen. And to be honest, I stayed at birthday parties for, a long time until I felt comfortable that my son was able to make those choices on his own, because I didn't want to put that pressure on the host to make sure that whatever my child was eating was safe. Having that conversation with the host before, like, are you okay if I just hang out? And I find most birthday parties nowadays, they are. But if that makes you nervous to drop him off somewhere and leave him as he grows, I would suggest staying. But and that's another reason why Kids and Co, like if your child is in care there, knowing that they are so vigilant and that they have all of the policy and they make their food in house, like that's amazing. Um, Most people, they want to do their best, right? It's just if you aren't living the food allergy world, it's you can't, you don't necessarily know, um, to the extent you might think you know when you're safe, but but they miss something, right? But I always, if you are leaving your child somewhere, um, I run through the EpiPen, right? I have a kit. It's like a makeup bag with the EpiPens in there and an emergency plan. And if you guys need the printout template for an emergency plan, and what's on there is just the phone. First off, number one, give the EpiPen with an instructions on how, call 911, and then the numbers for me and my partner, so that um, if it's somebody who's not familiar, they know the steps. And if I'm leaving him with somebody, I I explain it, no matter where we're going. I think it's an important. Whoa, here's the examples, and you can actually buy, if it's like grandparents, they're going for a sleepover at grandma's. You can, you don't even have to purchase them. If you go to the EpiPen website, you can get a kit of a practice EpiPen. So there's no needle, there's no medicine in it, but it actually allows your family members to practice what it is to take the blue part, the blue lid off the top, and inject the EpiPen. And I think that's just great practice for family and friends, anybody that spends a lot of time with your child. And how do you um, involve your child? It's important. And now that mine's 11, this is his new normal, and it's just a part of his life. He understands. One thing now, I have a big sign on the back of each door that he might be leaving that says, "Do you have your EpiPen kit?" It's just that prompt. But for toddlers, how do you find an age-appropriate way to involve them? That sign actually might work even for adults, right? Like if you're the parent of the toddler, you sometimes need that trigger, or yes, I need to bring the kit. I got it. Because you can't leave it in the car, right? If it's too cold or too hot, they're not effective. So it's not like you can leave one in the compartment of your glove box, because we live in Canada. It's sometimes hot and it's sometimes freezing, rarely middle of the ground. So it needs to come in with you wherever you go, and it needs access. But I try to involve your kid in the food prep for an event. And if you can offer them choices about the food they're going to be bringing to grandma's or to the barbecue or to the birthday party, that feels good, because sometimes kids with allergies don't have as many choices. So the more choices you can help them have, the less kind of intrusive these allergies feel in their world. Although I will say, as parents, I think we're more sensitive to this than the child is. Like, I think I've cried more times that my son couldn't have the cake at the birthday party than he has. He actually doesn't care, right? And so it's that anxiety piece as parents with kids with allergies. Um, and then it's just about reminding your child that there could be food at an event that they might not be able to eat, and having that discussion before you get there and before there's kids running around. And it's really about trying not to project that anxiety onto your child, right? And keeping it positive, right? Because really, kids go to birthday parties for the fun. You know, as adults, our social world often revolves around food, but and so that's kind of how we perceive it, but it's not so much with children, right? They want to play with their friends. And so just keep that perspective when you're explaining it to your child. And then I would just remind them of the rules around food frequently, so that it just becomes their normal. And it's the same thing for caregivers. I've kind of been speaking about this all the way through. So if they're staying with aunts and uncles, grandmas, whoever it is. It's just really clear communication and lots of prep ahead of time. So really, these conversations are easiest to have when you're not in a rush. So if you have 2 minutes and you're going to a meeting and your aunt is watching him in the evening, I might call her ahead of time to let her know kind of what it's like. Leave everything laid out for her so that it's there for her to read, but it's not something you want to do in that exchange quickly, right? At a play date, I would maybe explain beforehand or stay. And I think people just appreciate knowledge is power, right? And the more information, the better. This is where I want to hand it back to Kids and Company, because I think this is just such a cool part of the presentation where they discuss the logistics of their kitchen and how things run with allergies there. So I'm going to hand it back to you guys, okay?
Hi there, my name is Lisa Ruscica, and I am the Chief Food Ambassador for Kids and Company. We are really excited to be participating in this specialized allergen webinar with Carrie. As you heard, this is very near and dear to her heart. And the Kidco Kitchen plays a very critical role with Kids and Company as the in-house caterer for all the food that's served to the children, the lunch and the 3 snacks daily. And so what I mean by that is we don't have a third-party provider delivering food to our centers. We actually have the chefs that prepare all the food are employees of Kids and Company, and they are highly trained, and they provide a healthy hot lunch every day and the snacks with the same nutritional and delicious flavors that we do with the regular children. So the children that we're preparing allergen food, my chefs also make sure that the food looks a lot like the food that the other children are eating. So I just want to talk to a little bit more about our philosophy. And I just wanted to, it sort of segues into about who the Kidco Kitchen is. I actually am head of all of our kitchens, and our philosophy is that it's founded on fresh from scratch cooking. And our focus is building children with healthy bodies and minds. As mentioned, I'm responsible for all the recipe development and for planning all the menus. And we have a very ethnically diverse seasonal menu that changes every season. We right now are in our spring menu and are just about to launch our summer menu. And the ingredients that we work with and the meals that we produce have no artificial flavors or colors or additives or preservatives. So, and all of our kitchens cater to all allergens and food restrictions that the children have. And children might have one allergy or they might have multiple allergies, and our chefs are able to accommodate all the children at Kids and Company. The ingredients that we source and that I source are scrutinized to ensure that they're a clean ingredient deck. Exactly what Carrie was talking about, all the stuff in the middle of the grocery store, I make sure that every ingredient that goes into our kitchen that I have checked all of the labels, and I have spoken to all the manufacturers to make sure that there are no contains or may contain ingredients. And what I mean by that is if there's a disclaimer on an ingredient that says it may contain, like peanuts, tree nuts, or shellfish, we don't have any products like that ever coming into any one of our kitchens. And the other sort of stance that we've taken just to rule out any other anaphylactic allergies is whole eggs. So we don't serve any whole eggs in any of our locations as well. So like what Carrie was talking about, we also do focus on the main allergies: wheat, gluten, soy, egg, and dairy. Our kitchens produce a vegetarian meal every day and a vegan meal alternative for any of the children that the parents want their children to be on our vegetarian meal. But really what we're very specialized about is we're able to make customized individual menus for complex diets. And what I mean by that is if it's more commonplace, like a dairy allergy or an egg allergy, and I've already mentioned to you with the peanuts, tree nuts, and shellfish and whole eggs, we don't have any of those in our sites. But we're able to work with the family. I'm able to work with the family, and my chefs on site are, to customize a menu that works specifically for that family. A child might have a number of different allergies, and we want to make sure that that child is safe in our care at all times. We also want to make sure, as I mentioned before, that the substitution looks like the rest of the food that the children are having, but also that, I think we've got to go back one more slide, Carrie. Thank you. And that it has the same nutritional value as what the other children are eating. And as I've mentioned before, we have an amazing dedicated, I have a great team here at head office that we work with all our chefs every day, but then as well we have chefs on site that are very dedicated to ensuring that the children with allergens and food substitutions are safe in our care. Next. Thank you. So also in each of our classrooms, we have the menus and the ingredient lists. The ingredient lists specify exactly what's in every single recipe. And so that's a great cross-reference for any of our teachers if they need to have a quick look to make sure that the children all in their classroom are able to eat everything that's on the menu that day. But also there is a detailed allergen and restriction list that's in the classroom that the teachers can cross-reference. And actually there are photographs of all the children in the kitchen and in the classrooms with anaphylactic allergies. So again, so that everybody knows that these are the kids to be looking out for, to just be extra careful. Also, our teachers are extensively trained on any emergency procedures for the administration of the EpiPen. We have all food protocols in place to make sure, again, that if there was an emergency, that all the protocols are followed. So in order to help our chefs, we have developed our own proprietary allergen database. And that database daily produces allergen labels. And on that label are your child's name, the center that they attend, the allergy that they have, and the allergen substitution. So there is no confusion when an allergen substitution arrives at the center. The kitchen checks each substitution to make sure that it's correct. And when our parents fill out an allergen form, which is where we drive our database from time to time, with ongoing testing, children can outgrow allergens. And so because we are our own in-house caterer, we're able to react very quickly, update the requirements, and make any necessary changes so that we can get the children onto our regular menu as quickly as possible. The other thing too is we don't allow any outside food into our centers, except for the infants that are transitioning on to our menu. So we do all of our own catering, the Kidco Kitchen. As you're all really aware, we've just had wonderful Mother's Day celebrations, Father's Day celebrations. We have a whole bunch of graduation ceremonies taking place over the next couple of weeks. The Kidco Kitchen does all of that catering. We don't bring in any outside food for any of those occasions. Any of our field trips, anything when anybody speaking or any other special events that are going on in any of our centers, it's the Kidco Kitchen that does all of our catering. For our staff, we have a separate refrigerator that all the staff keeps their food in, and they must adhere to our food policies as well. At Kids and Company, we do family-style dining, which is where the children pass the food and they serve themselves. It is a wonderful way for children to feel empowered. They eat more. It really helps with fine motor skills. But again, having a child with an allergen or an anaphylactic allergy, you would be concerned. What we do at Kids and Company is we make sure that that child is tucked in right beside the teacher, and the teacher makes sure, because the teacher sits with the children, making sure that the child is always beside them and watching and making sure that they don't come in contact with any food that they shouldn't. So just in conclusion, with the Kidco Kitchen, as I mentioned, that what's so great about it is we are our own in-house caterer. So we make the decisions, I make the decisions, I work with all our chefs on site, and our number one priority, yes, we feed children every day, and we have a wonderful regular menu with the 3 snacks every day and the hot lunch, but our number one priority every single day is to ensure the safety of the children while they're in our care, and particularly the children that have allergen food restrictions and obviously have anaphylactic allergies. And I can assure you that my team are a team of experts, and we're here to help our parents. I know how stressful. I have 3 children of my own, and it was stressful enough, me going back to work, but the thought of having a child that had an anaphylactic allergy or an allergy restriction coming into care would be very scary. And I can assure you that I know, and all my chefs know, exactly what goes into our food, which is why we do scratch cooking, and that we're here to help our parents transition, and that you need to know that your children are very safe in our care. Thank you. Over to Carrie.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that that's awesome. First off, like you said, because it's safe. We need to know as parents when we're sending our babies with allergies into care of somebody else that they're safe. But second, I love what you spoke of about inclusivity, right? Because I worried when my son sit by himself, because that was their plan on how to keep him safe. And I love what you said about how he's sitting at the table, but he's safe, and that's huge. But let's talk about dining out, because that happens when you're going back to work and life is busy, and sometimes you need to grab something on the run, or you want to enjoy the experience as a family as eating out. But that's also really, really anxiety provoking for lots of people with allergies, because you're putting trust into a stranger, right? And so how do you do this safely? I don't go to restaurants where they don't speak English, right? My language. So I love ethnic food, and I'll go with my husband, but I don't bring my son that has an allergy, because you don't ever want a language barrier to be the reason why he was accidentally given food with peanuts. So make sure you're speaking the same language. And I always call the restaurant ahead of the time to speak with the manager or chef about do you have anything safe here for him? So with him, it's peanuts, but dairy's a big one, right? Shellfish. Let's have that discussion, because you know what? They've probably had it before. And you will get a sense on whether they're competent or they're not. And if any red flags are going in your head, then I just wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't call during peak dining hours either, because they're distracted. I like to call when the restaurant kind of first opens in the morning, The other thing is chain restaurants, because lots of times they have policy around allergens. Um, so I've listed my favorite here in terms of peanut allergy. Like, again, you would need to go to their website, call and check, but Moxie's doesn't have peanuts in their facility, and they have a strict allergy policy, so we go there a lot. And so it's about finding your favorites, having those conversations, going on the website, and then testing it out. This is a big one. No EpiPen equals no food. Your EpiPen has to go everywhere with your child, regardless of whether they're going to eat or not, right? My 11-year-old, this is a little bit more applicable, because, you know, he'll go for a bike ride and think, oh, I don't need my EpiPen. Yes, you do. Because what if somebody was eating a peanut butter sandwich before you went, or you stop at the park and you play? No. And this is an important lesson for caregivers who maybe don't take care of him all the time. Moms are usually super vigilant at this, but you want to just make sure it goes everywhere with you. And swinging it back to restaurants, I never eat at buffets with my son with allergies, and I don't recommend it to my clients either. There's just a high risk of cross-contamination, because people are serving that food who aren't employees of the restaurant, right? So there's just a high risk there. And same with deep fried foods, because do they have a fryer only where they fry fish, right? Or do they fry their French fries and their fish and their chicken wings all in one fryer? If they do, there's a high risk of cross-contamination. And so same thing, it's about calling ahead, speaking to the chef once you get there. Basically make a plan, right? And know that that they're being vigilant on the back end, and communicating that. So travel.
Carrie,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We've got a question here that I'm going to read for you.
Okay.
So, hi, I have a question for Carrie. This is from Natalie. My second son is 1, and we recently got confirmation he is allergic to peanut, tree nuts, soy, dairy, and egg. I am still breastfeeding for the extra nutrition, but not sure how allergens affect breast milk. Sometimes he seems to get itchier around the eyes after a feed. Do you have any experience with this or advice?
Yeah, usually, so breast milk, it seems to waver. The fact that he's having some symptoms, I would wonder, take a look at your diet. Is it high in peanuts or tree nuts, or something? There's quite a list there, right? Have you tried eating the hypoallergenic diet and seeing if it makes a difference or not? It might, research says that it shouldn't matter, but my practice, I see it a lot where it can, especially if you're eating a lot of the food that he's allergic to. And it sounds like he has quite a list. First off, that's awesome that you're still nursing him this long and with that big of a list of allergies. But I would try maybe cutting them out one at a time and seeing. It might be the soy though, because that's in a lot of foods. Mm-hmm. I hope that answered the question. So travel, this one, oh man, again, it's anxiety. I could probably take stocks in Lysol wipes. I wipe down the surfaces of everything, even in restaurants. Before we sit down to eat, I wipe the table with a Lysol wipe, just because I want to know, especially with toddlers, because what do? They eat off the table, right? So wipe down the table. If you're renting a car, wipe down the car. When you have a child with allergies, all of a sudden you become planner extraordinaire. It's a little bit harder to fly by the seat of your pants. So you want to kind of plan where you're going to stop for meals ahead of time. And where are you going to stop? Where are there restaurants, and where are there restaurants that's safe for your child? The other thing is I pack a big cooler wherever we go, and I carry lots of snacks that I know that I could feed him until we found somewhere safe for him to eat. Plain. I cried the first time I took my then 18-month-old on an airplane because I felt scared. At the time, they still served nuts, and some airlines still do. I flew on the weekend for work, and the airline asked if I wanted a bag of mixed nuts, which I said no. But if you call and have a conversation 48 hours prior to your flight, let them know that your child has an anaphylactic allergy. And then what happens is they'll put you in a safe place. So everyone around your child, the row ahead, a row behind, and beside, they ask them not to consume whatever that allergy is. The other thing is I talk when I board the plane. I'll say, my son has an anaphylactic allergy. Can you please announce this to the flight? Because as a mom, I know that I would be respectful of not like cracking open the M&M peanuts if there's a child on flight who's allergic, right? I also Lysol and clean out the crevices of the seat before my child sits on it. And you want to carry EpiPens, obviously, on your carry-on. You shouldn't need a note to bring these on. And the same is if you need to bring snacks on flight that are safe for your child. If you got a doctor's note for this, if your child's a bit older, when you're passing through security, then they won't take them from you. Same if your child doesn't drink milk, right? It can't drink whatever it is that's offered on plane. Just if you get a letter from your family physician or your allergist, it will help just any trouble that you might have in security. And I like to fresh EpiPens on the airplane. I usually order 3 new ones, and I like to bring 3. I want to have a backup to the backup to the backup. It's just about being prepared because you're in the air, right? But remember, food allergies aren't airborne. So I know it feels scary that someone might be consuming something 3 rows back, right? But your child's sitting with you and he's safe. He's not sitting with that person. He's not going to touch them. It's okay, but it feels scary, and I get that. I just wouldn't let them eat the snacks on the airplane. Bring your own, right? And then when you get to hotels, same thing. It's about wiping down those hard surfaces when you get there. I call ahead about allergy policy, and if you can book a hotel that has a fridge, that's important, and a microwave, something so that you could cook for your child if there wasn't a safe place for him to eat. I used to pack my little mini fryer with me, and I would just cook him mini meals. I'd go get fresh food, and we'd pack for the day, and away we would go. It just became our new normal. It's actually a pretty healthy way to eat if you think about it. If you only stay on those outside rows of the grocery store and you're cooking fresh foods for him all the time, or her. So that's it in a nutshell. And again, if anybody's listening here, you probably have a child or know somebody who has a food allergy, and just know that you're doing a good job. It's a big task to go back to work anyways, never mind the task of like trying to ensure that your child's safe, meeting his nutrition needs, right? And that they're still living life and having fun and being included and doing all the things. So if you would like my ebook on this, you can either reach out to me or Kids & Co. and I can help you. I'll send it to you, happy to. But I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to listen, and I hope you found this valuable. And I'm always here for questions if anybody has any. So thank you for joining us, and I will see you guys next time.